Mario. I know for the past 10 episodes I've been saying Mario, which isn't how I actually say it, but I say it like that just because it's faster. Super Mario Land was the fourth installment of Nintendo's Super Mario series, as well as being a launch title for the Game Boy. There really isn't too much worth mentioning about the development, apart from being the first game not being directed by series creator Shigeru Miyamoto. The game sold over 18 million copies, which topped the previous game Super Mario Bros. 3. Like its contemporaries, the game was received with critical acclaim, with praise to the gameplay and how fun it was, while most criticism was directed towards its short length. Several decades later, and you have this fool doing a review on it. So let's check out Super Mario on the go. Oh yeah, and for those who are wondering, my GBA has been dead for years now, so it doesn't work. And this isn't even Mario. Graphically, it's on par with the first game, albeit slightly worse since it's on a
puny Game Boy Advance.
Wrong console, which is fine considering that the Game Boy didn't have color back then. Just some weird green and dark green. I don't know.
Game Boy.
The game is most similar to the first Super Mario Bros., where Mario has to save a princess from a brand new villain that was so forgettable that I had to look his name up.
Tanga?
If the Super Mario series had anything to boast about, it would be that the controls are guaranteed to be great. The first game set the bar really high, and the third game somehow topped it. Mario 2? It depends who you play as. But in this game, the controls are so stiff. How did a series who's perfected their controls mess it up here? To make the game harder to beat, thus extending the length of game time? What's that? Do you hear this? Sounds like petting to me. Something annoying about this game is that when you die, sometimes they throw you right in front of where you died. So you can die again, and again, and again. And oh, look at that, I got a game over. At least they were creative with this one. The level design is most comparable to the first game, which on paper sounds good, but this isn't a tree I'm talking about, because in practice, the design of these levels don't really accompany the controls well. As similar as it is to the first Super Mario Bros., Land does offer some new ideas that were unfortunately never seen in later games, including a submarine level, a plane level, and a bunch of unique set pieces, such as jumping on these boulders. Lots of brand new enemies, as well as some old favorites. Koopas explode now for some reason, which was a little hard to get used to at first, but eventually I knew how to dodge them. Power-ups are much like the first game. We're really seeing a pattern here, aren't we? Your mushroom, which gives Mario another hit point. And like the first game, you can have up to 2 hits until dun. Tropes are tropes, not BigAnf jokes. I feel like I was going somewhere with that one. And the fire flower, but the fire flower doesn't shoot fire here. This time, it shoots these bouncy balls that, while it can kill enemies from rebounds, which is honestly pretty cool, they are very tricky to land when you're simply trying to kill the enemy in front of you in an open area, as you have to wait till the last second to kill it. Oh yeah, there's also the star power-up, which I still don't know what it's called. I think it's still called the Starman at that point. I don't know. Anyway, the power-up is just
Star Fox.
And 1-ups are represented by hearts now, which is strange, but it does make sense. Lives can also be collected by this bonus minigame after reaching a tower or beating a boss, where you can gain up to 3 lives or a power-up. Reminds me of Mario 2's way of gaining extra lives based on luck, which I really like, and the latter gives a nice twist to it. It turns out that Mario isn't in the Mushroom Kingdom this time around, but instead in Sarasa Land, where he has to save Princess Daisy, which is her debut by the way, and she's more or less the same as Princess Toadstool. And King Koopa is in here as well, this Tatangi man, who is referred to on Wikipedia as
an evil spaceman.
It's easy to see why Nintendo preferred a turtle over
an evil space cowboy.
The music is pretty good, but it's as if the soundtrack goes in one ear and comes out the other, which wasn't the case for the NES games for the most part. The only one I recall thoroughly is the Overworld theme. Listen. There was one other song I remember, but that's because I heard a remix of it in the Subspace Emissary from Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Land is so similar to the original Super Mario Bros. That it even shares the same title theme. Trust me, it's a great song. Masterpiece. The bosses are kinda hit or miss. On one hand, they're just pathetic King Koopa ripoffs from the first game. You know, the one boss you shouldn't be rehashing. While the other half of boss fights are these fun adrenaline rush levels with a boss at the end. Here you control one of two vehicles, being a submarine and a plane. Both control identically to each other, which is a good thing since both vehicles feel weighty but flexible enough to dodge obstacles. You see, Wrath of Cortex in Final Fantasy VII? Submarine levels can be good. Because in your games, the controls suck wood. Professional rapper right here.
No!
The final boss is probably the best in the game. Tatango, or whatever his name is, has two phases. First one is pretty much a cloud shooting chickens at you.
It's as arbitrary can get.
But in Dr. Wily style, Phase 2 comes into action, ramping up the difficulty, with harder to dodge projectiles. It isn't hard once you get the pattern down, and unlike its contemporaries, with maybe the exception of Wart, it just feels so satisfying to kill him once and for all. It is then that you finally save Princess Daisy, and the game ends. You probably spent less than an hour on it, and you're already finished. For the past 4 if you count lost levels, and don't worry, I'll get to that one at some point, didn't have a save feature, which was mostly problematic in Mario 2 since there was no warp zones in that game. At least the no save thing doesn't really matter in Super Mario Land, thanks to the short length, but what was I saying again? Was I supposed to be reviewing Hotel Mario or something?
No!
Super Mario Land goes by so fast to the point that it's hard to remember it. As a Mario game, Super Mario Land is an acceptable, albeit janky attempt to bring Mario on the go. The biggest issue here is the control, and if the jumps were less stiff and the removal of cheap deaths, then this could be something great. But overall, it's pretty forgettable, so it's a little hard to give this one the approval. Super Mario Land 2 is up next, and what I hope to see is a more interesting villain, a game that exceeds an hour in length, more creative boss fights, and most importantly, better controls. Then I might consider recommending it. Welcome to the editing zone. In this issue, we'll be counting how many times I compared Super Mario Land to the first Super Mario Bros. It's on par with the first game. It's most similar to the first Super Mario Bros. The first game set the bar really high, most comparable to the first game, as similar as it is to the first Super Mario Bros. Like the first game, Land is so similar to the original Super Mario Bros. King Koopa ripoffs from the first game.
We're really seeing a pattern here.